we got to keep going because there's so much good content. So please join me in welcoming to the stage co-founder and CEO of Velocity Labs, Nico Arevalo.
Thank you.
Buena suerte.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Is this working? Hello, hello? Yeah, I think it's working now. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to the talk, and thanks for joining us today at Sub-Zero. Hope you guys are having fun. It's definitely a nice event, nice city, nice country to be at. As Evan said, I'm Nico Arevalo, co-founder of Velocity Labs. Velocity Labs is an ecosystem growth and product venture studio for Polkadot. So we basically are a core contributor to Polkadot, and we help the ecosystem with DeFi and infrastructure business development services. And we also have a product and engineering arm in-house. So today, I'm talking about DeFi infrastructure reloaded, the scalability edge, and the rise of specialized chains. I think in DeFi, for good reasons, we've kind of shifted a lot of the focus into the product layer, which I think we were lacking, but sometimes as an industry, we kind of swing to the two extremes of the pendulum, and regardless of the focus being more on the product layer, there's still a lot of changes and evolution at the infrastructure layer. So I'm here to talk a little bit about that. So the agenda for today, it's DeFi, the current state of DeFi infrastructure. We'll talk a little bit about the inflection point in which general purpose chains are currently at. We'll talk a little bit about the mode of specialization in today's DeFi world. And within that, what role does sovereignty play? Because now there's a lot of optionality compared to 2 or 3 years ago. And then lastly, we'll talk a lot about how Polkadot fits into that. So starting with DeFi today, and I think Dean made a great chat and kind of a segue into what I'm mentioning, which is the lack of UX that we currently have in DeFi. So we have on one end, L1s, they generally lack network effects because they have to build everything from scratch. And L2s basically fragment liquidity. In the current state of UX, we kind of get used to it as very crypto natives users, but we pay fees that not only fluctuate, but the base asset in which we pay fees also fluctuates. So it's two variables that fluctuate, and from the application's perspective, this is basically the cost of goods sold, right? So it's very hard to build like sustainable businesses around that. Then the other thing is that applications have been forced for go-to-market perspectives and revenue capture to basically be on all chains at the same time, right? Also, developers has mostly prioritize infrastructure building over product focus. And then lastly, another important layer of the infrastructure stack, which are the assets that compose DeFi, they're basically also forced to be on all chains, but not on all chains they can be native, right? So we have this circumstances of having wrapped and native tokens all across these different chains. So, I mean, we've gotten far, certainly, but we're not going to onboard the million users that we've been talking about for ages with this UX. So what's happening now is that general purpose chains are definitely at an inflection point, right? For the DeFi summer 2020, 2023, they were basically the basis of experimentation in DeFi. It was the easiest way to deploy an application, test things out, and see what worked. But I think that paradigm is quickly changing. One thing that's happening is that we have an oversupply of block space, and most of this block space, if not all, it's basically undifferentiated. There's obviously some technical differences between like high quality block space and low quality block space, which I'll touch a little bit on, but it is mostly generic for the application perspective, right? General purpose L1s and L2s are being forced to differentiate via go-to-market and execution playbooks. It's not so much about the technical differentiation. And because of that, I think we're getting to that end of the cycle where we are seeing L2s being launched every week, and we're probably going to see a lot less few of them. I think my bet is the last ones are going to be Monad and Mega ETH, which are both going with a vintage approach, one going for super quick block times. So I think we're going to just see a little bit less of that. And then the other key factor to mention here is that the generalized smart contract platforms that have seen basically huge adoption, in crypto terms, of course, are starting to face some competition, right, on the part of specialized chains. So 2 examples here are Solana, with the advent of Hyperliquid. You see how a lot of the volume and a lot of the trading activity, which sort of was the focus of Solana, is starting to migrate over to Hyperliquid. And to a lesser extent, but it's kind of a trend that's picking up, is Ethereum, as seen as the main issuance chain in DeFi, starting to see other competition on the part of stablecoin chains and RWA-focused chains, right? So why specialization is the new moat? And for the people here that are very into the weeds in Polkadot, it might sound obvious, but not for everyone. So different use cases require different things, right? So we'll give a couple examples, but stablecoins, they require some sort of monetary policy compliance controls. Perp dexes, deterministic latency, ultra-fast block times, and prioritize Oracle lanes, AMMs, predictable, actually it's not block space, predictable order flow, MEV mitigation, and same for RWAs, asset on and off-ramp logic, compliance, privacy, preserving features, et cetera, et cetera. These are all things that general smart contract chains can really account for. So some deeper examples and notable names, stablecoin chains, for the ones that have been following, is kind of the new narrative. I think it took a bit to actually materialize, and we'll see how much traction they actually get as these chains start to launch. But some notable names, it's Tempo, which is a combination of Paradigm and Stripe, Arc from Circle, Plasma from USDT, Codex, kind of like sponsored by USDC on Ethereum, and Stable, also with a big backing by Tether. So what are they trying to optimize for? Definitely fast finality and short block times for a lot of these stablecoin-focused use cases are fundamental for these to work. Second, optional embedded privacy. Also, stable dollar-denominated fees, which I alluded to in the first slide. Now you're going to be able to pay fees with stablecoins. Compliance features and prioritize block space for payments. So clearly, they're building the infrastructure to focus on a specific use cases and try to build that around it. The other example is perp-dex chain. So notable examples are Hyperliquid, Lighter, Bullet, Astar. A lot of these chains that are really competing for this market. What do they need? Fast finality, short block times, healthy order flow, MEV aware, segmentation of orders versus trade at the protocol level. The fact that every time that you place an order, you don't have to actually pay fees on just placing or canceling that order. On-chain order books, and they of course rely a lot on oracles. So in this new juncture, what role does sovereignty play a role in? And sorry for it kind of got messed up in the PDF, but anyways. So anyways, the market, as I've been saying, the market clearly points toward the value of specialization, but within specialization, the jury's still out if people or application developers, blockchain developers want to be a standalone chain, or they want to be part of a fully fledged ecosystem. And clearly, they're not both mutually exclusive. All we're doing here in crypto is we're building tools, and different people need different tools. But then what I'm trying to do is kind of build a mental model about who is going to need what type of tools. And as I mentioned, we'll later go into like what role Polkadot offers in that paradigm. So for that mental model, we're going to split build our audiences into the two extremes of the spectrum. So one being a very well-resourced team, and the other one being a smaller startup, which is trying to build something a little bit more experimental. So for the well-researched team, what do they need, right? They generally bring their own distribution channels, which is super important. They're not going to depend on accessing an already existing base. So they don't really need tapping into Ethereum's liquidity or tapping into Solana's user base, right? They're bringing it from other ways, from Web 2 sources or from other customer bases outside of crypto, right? They don't shy away from a technical challenge. One, because they have enough resources that they don't have to really rush the time to market. Second, which is the second point, the third point, sorry, they can sustain longer go-to-market cycles due to the lack of runway concerns. And then fourth, they see the value in having complete control over the tech stack, right? So the examples are Tempo. Tempo is definitely not shying away from a technical challenge, so much so that you're starting to see these builders that aren't necessarily core protocol developers, like Paradigm or like Circle, and they're going out into the market and actually acquiring the teams that have this specific core protocol development, consensus design type of expertise. So for Tempo, they recently did a big strategic investment in Commonwealth, and for Circle, they acquired Strangelove Labs, which is one of the teams from the Cosmos ecosystem who used to work in Consensus. So clearly they're okay investing and taking on these technical challenge because they see the ROI of it. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, we have smaller startups, shorter runways. First, they require building a customer base from scratch, and as a result, they rely on accessible user base where they deploy, right? It's very hard for them to bootstrap that from scratch. Resource constraint, shorten go-to-market cycles. They leverage existing infrastructure, the fact that they don't have to pay on their own for an Oracle, for a Block Explorer, for bridges. It really allows them to launch the market faster. They value interoperability to outsource some of their non-core but essential services, be that identity or such. Lacks core product engineering capabilities, and cannot and will not bootstrap economic security on their own, right? So some examples are Codex, another stable chain, Katana, a DeFi-focused chain on Polygon, and Bob built on Bitcoin. So we clearly see the market, at least looking at these two extremes, segmenting it to the two different product requirements that blockchain ecosystems can tackle in a different way, right? So then, a lot are going to say, like, Polkadot has been offering this for a while. And if you look historically, Akala was one of the first stable chains. A lot of people don't see this, but it was one of the first chains that had a stablecoin embedded directly into the protocol and have all the services built around that. Polkadot's integrations were one of the first blockchains specialized on trading use cases. The issue was that we were too early, and at least this is my assessment of the situation. At that point, we offer builders the tools, but these were experimental builders. These were resource-constrained builders, the second option that I was talking about, and we didn't really offer the necessary network effects that an ecosystem should offer, right? So heavy technical lift compared to smart contract applications, longer time to markets, and no existing infrastructure or user base. Now, where does Polkadot fit into this today? And this is where I do have a lot of conviction on where we are, because the way that I see it is that we focused on building a lot of the hard problems, which is scalability, decentralization, interoperability. We have very good and battle-tested tools for that, and now we're kind of going back and solving the issues that we should have solved at the beginning, which is enabling people building on Polkadot to actually have a very good chance to be successful with the products that they build. So with Polkadot Hub, this is at least how I see it. Like, we're basically building Polkadot Hub to catch up with some of the other ecosystem and offer these table stake services that others offer, infrastructure, liquidity, access to a customer base. And then in turn, it'll complement the product offering that we currently have in Polkadot. So at least the North Star that we're aiming for is have successful teams launch on Polkadot and provide them with the best migration path for the successful ones that want to go and deploy a standalone parachain or a connected parachain directly on Polkadot. So I think the future's bright. I think we are taking the right measures to kind of get the adoption that we want to see both in Polkadot and with DeFi, but only time will tell. I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nico. Thank you very much.